So, I wanted to take a moment today to talk about a really interesting topic that affects a lot of people. And you might know this in the form of a critical voice. And everybody has, to one degree or another, a critical voice inside that tends to be in proportion with whatever the task is in a healthy way. But for some people who were raised with maybe not good enough parents or parenting, that the kids kind of have to make up for that lack of parenting on their own. And when that happens, the kid's critical voice becomes really prominent in their life, and it takes up a lot of time and space and a lot of their conscious focus and attention. And when people come to me for therapy and they sit on my couch and they tell me how painful their life is and that they have these routine disturbances about every day of their life, and I've learned to hear what they're really saying, what that little kid inside is saying about that critical voice. And it's the critical voice that before you even open your eyelids in the morning, before your head gets off the pillow, it says, oh, well, you have to do something that you love to do, say for work, but then that critical voice will come in and say, oh, but you're not going to be ready for it. Or, it's not going to go the way you think. Or, God, that's so hard. I don't know how you're ever going to be able to do that task. And it might be something as simple as just showing up to work and filling out an email, or making a little memo, or showing somebody how to do something on the computer, or how to use an app, for example, that is new to someone else, and you're like, maybe you even invented the app and teaching it as secondhand. Notice that the critical voice doesn't respond to to those facts. Notice that it really is just trying to get you to feel bad. Because when you feel bad, what that critical voice does is it tries to get you to think that you're smaller, that you're not important, that you want to be important, you have goals that put you out in the world and all of that. But notice that that critical voice inside is the one voice that keeps you small by what it says to you. And the second part of that is by you listening to it and giving it your attention. Because this is a challenging aspect for adult children who were neglected as kids, because they crave attention really bad. And when they understand that the critical voice that they carry with them in their head that berates them all the time, that was their source of attention when they were little. So it's helpful to understand that. It's helpful to understand the good that came out of that critical voice, because it was a survival skill and it was appropriate for a time and a place that's long since gone. And so it's time to let that critical voice go, because that critical voice robs you of your happiness, your spontaneity, being in relationships, because it robs people of doing new things. So the world gets really routine, small, and boring. And the way through this, again, is just to recognize and say to yourself out loud, that, oh, this critical voice is my jailer. And when I was a kid, this critical voice helped me get enough attention to grow up and wait for a time and a place when I could be the grown-up that I needed in the parents for them to be the grown-up. And unfortunately, they just weren't. For whatever reason, doesn't matter. Because what matters is the here and now. But that critical voice is the thought process. It's actually a form of bad hypnosis. It's like a form of bad hypnosis that makes you think you've got a problem when you don't. And the good news is, if you're watching this, you're pretty far along in your healing. So realize the way through maintaining your self-confidence and increasing your sense of power, efficacy, and agency in your own life is by knowing that that critical voice is just telling you a story. You don't have to believe it. And notice how it changes or doesn't change depending on what you feed it and what the, like, if for example, say that you have a meeting at 10 a.m. this morning and you're getting ready to go into work and you're thinking about it, and instead you're like, oh my God, so-and-so is going to be there and they don't like me, and then notice what you're feeling. And then your mind might go, yeah, they will, but so what? They kind of keep it on the surface level. And then your thoughts that critical voice might sneak in again and say, yeah, but they could tell Bob, blah, 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 and then Carrie, blah, 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 and then that would mean this tragic, horrible thing you never want to have happen. And then notice how you're feeling. And especially pay attention to your breathing and pay attention to your stomach and your tops of your legs. And then say, oh, thank you, mind, for showing me how you used to think. And then turn it positive. And instead say, you know what? Yeah, Bob is going to be there, and Bob has a big mouth, and Bob's going to be Bob, and I'm me. And I can handle Bob, I can handle Carrie, I can handle all of them. Because I'm the adult I was always waiting for. And then actually picture yourself handling whatever that situation is. And notice that your brain won't want you to do that. It's really why depression and this critical thought process is so devastating, because it appears to be a helper voice. Like, it appears to be a thought process that is saying, oh, hey, I'm just here to keep you on your toes and make sure you got everything you need before you need it. Because doesn't it suck to get to a place where you need something and you don't have it? So realize that whenever a thought process is in a foundation or comes from a foundation of fear, don't pay too much attention to it. Because you want to come from a place of everything is working out happily for me now. You really want to come from a place and change your thinking to occupy more of your thoughts with positive affirmations that are true and accurate, not just like, oh my God, I'm going to have $1 billion in 5 seconds. It would be wonderful, but instead just say something generic, like all transitions happily now. All transitions happily now. And what you got to do is, in order to counter that negative voice, that critical one, you need to say something positive about yourself and the situation. And then argue, if you will, with that voice, because it will be just like a pit bull trying to grab a toy. It won't let go. But what'll happen is you'll wear that voice out, because it really is the voice of you as a kid and not you as the adult. And as the adult, you actually have that upper hand, and you have that ability to do this. But that voice doesn't want you to know that. So that's kind of my thought du jour today about what people are really facing right now, and realize that during times of stress, this thought process gets activated more and more and more. So that's also when you need to be kinder to yourself and gentler and more loving to yourself. Okay, so also one more thing, because it's like come from a place of empathy and compassion for yourself. Because when you understand that voice was actually you at, say, 5 years of age in an adult situation where you didn't know what you were doing, you didn't know how to cook the meal or the chicken in the fridge or whatever was going on, because the adults were supposed to do that, then realize, how ingenious you were to make that voice. Because I'm bringing this up because having that kind of empathetic compassion for yourself in that situation will do two things. It will help you separate from that thought process, which is so negative, and it will also help you have empathy and compassion for yourself, because that's what you needed when you were 5 and didn't get, for example. So I hope that this makes sense to you. I hope that it helps. And this is, the power of the compassionate voice versus the power of the critical voice. So I hope that you're out getting your walk in for the day. I hope that you've eaten something healthy foods, and I hope that you've been able to get enough rest, and you realize you deserve it. Okay? Take good care, and we'll talk soon.